Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have lived thousands of miles away from Britain, and yet somehow Britain never really stopped talking about them. Now they are back. Harry, Meghan, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet have returned to the UK after more than 6 years in California, with the children expected to begin school in Britain. Importantly, the Sussexes remain private, non-working members of the royal family. But the moment they landed, something fascinating happened. The media machine exploded. Where will they live? Why have they returned? Will Harry reconcile with William? Will Meghan act again? Will they attend royal events? Will the public forgive them? And perhaps the biggest question of all, because that was exactly the issue raised by a panel discussion on, and some of the comments deserve a much closer look. One of the most striking observations from the panel was the suggestion that the sheer intensity of hostility toward Harry and Meghan can be baffling. And honestly, that raises an uncomfortable question. How much criticism is actually about what Harry and Meghan do today? And how much is about everything people have accumulated against them over the past 6 years? Yes, Harry gave interviews. Yes, Meghan gave interviews. Yes, Harry published. Yes, the couple produced documentaries and spoke openly about their experiences. People are absolutely entitled to dislike those decisions. But should that mean they are permanently condemned? Should every future move automatically be interpreted through the worst possible lens? That is where the discussion becomes much more interesting. Because some panelists argued that public opinion isn't necessarily fixed. It can change. And history has shown us that royal reputations can change dramatically over time. People who were once intensely criticised can eventually become figures of sympathy, nostalgia, or even affection. So why couldn't Harry and Meghan's story evolve too? One of the most compelling suggestions from the panel was remarkably simple. Not a royal comeback, not a campaign for titles, not a demand for public approval, just life. Harry has charitable commitments in Britain, including his long-running connection with the Invictus community, while the family's return gives Archie and Lilibet an opportunity to experience more of their father's country and build connections there. And Meghan has her own professional life, her own ambitions, her own identity. And this is where the conversation around Meghan becomes particularly important. Why does Meghan's career continue to generate such fascination? If Meghan wants to build a lifestyle business, let her. If she wants to produce television, let her. If she wants to make documentaries, let her. And if Meghan Markle decides that she wants to act again? She was an actress before she became the Duchess of Sussex. Acting was her profession. She had a successful television career before entering royal life, and recent reporting says she has been offered an on-screen acting role in the UK. ITV News has reported that the role has been offered, although details of the project have not been officially confirmed. And suddenly, some people appear determined to make that controversial. But think about how strange that is. If a former royal wants to act, why should that be treated as some kind of scandal? Nobody is forcing anyone to watch. Nobody is being asked to applaud. It's simply a professional woman potentially returning to a profession she once pursued. And perhaps that's the bigger point. She doesn't need permission from the British press. She doesn't need permission from royal commentators, and she certainly doesn't need permission from people who have already decided they dislike her. If she wants to act, let her act. If the role succeeds, congratulations. If it fails, she moves on. That's how careers work. And this brings us back to the media. Because the Sussexes are simultaneously criticised for seeking attention, while the media continues to give them enormous amounts of attention. That contradiction is impossible to ignore. Harry and Meghan announce their return. Headlines everywhere. Their children go to school. Speculation. Their house. Speculation. Their security. Speculation. Meghan's career. Speculation. Harry's relationship with William. Speculation. King Charles. Speculation. Christmas. Speculation. Royal events. Speculation. Even the possibility of Meghan returning to acting has become a major story. Reuters recently described their return as reigniting intense interest in the couple, noting that their brand continues to generate enormous attention despite the polarization surrounding them. And the Washington Post described the British reaction to their planned return as a media response. So perhaps we need to ask, because every Harry and Meghan controversy generates clicks, every disagreement generates headlines, every photograph becomes content, every rumour becomes another article, and then we're told the Sussexes are somehow obsessed with publicity, but look at the machines surrounding them. Now, let's be fair. Harry and Meghan cannot control how people feel about them. If someone dislikes them, that's their right. If someone believes Harry went too far with, that's their opinion. If someone believes the couple should have handled their grievances privately, they're entitled to believe that. But public opinion is not a life sentence. People change their minds, circumstances change, people mature, families reconcile, old controversies lose their emotional power. And perhaps the biggest opportunity Harry and Meghan have now is not to convince everyone that they were right. Perhaps it's simply to come home, raise the children, support causes that matter, build businesses, work, act if Meghan wants to act, create if they want to create, and let time do what arguments never could. Because this return doesn't have to be about becoming working royals again. It doesn't have to be about reclaiming a place inside the institution. It doesn't even have to be about winning over the British public. It could simply be about Harry and Meghan creating a different chapter, a quieter one, a more mature one. A chapter where they don't have to respond to every headline. A chapter where the children can know more of their father's homeland. And perhaps, eventually, a chapter where the public gets bored of the war. Because, let's be honest, at some point something has to change. Maybe that change won't happen because Harry gives another interview. Maybe it won't happen because Meghan makes another statement. Maybe it happens because they simply stop participating in the cycle. They live, they work, they raise their children, they support their causes. And Britain gradually gets used to seeing them again. So perhaps the most fascinating part of this return isn't whether Harry and Meghan will become royals again. They won't. It isn't whether Meghan should be allowed to act. Of course she should. And it isn't whether everyone will suddenly love them. They won't. The fascinating question is whether Britain can finally move beyond the idea that Harry and Meghan must forever be either heroes or villains, because people are more complicated than headlines. And perhaps the ultimate test of this new chapter will be whether the Sussexes can return to Britain. Maybe Harry and Meghan don't need a royal comeback. Maybe they don't need a public relations victory. Maybe they just need the freedom to live their lives. And if Meghan wants to step back in front of the camera and act again, judge the performance, not the surname. And if Harry wants to spend more time supporting his causes and being closer to home, perhaps the real reset begins when everybody stops asking and starts asking something much simpler. This is, if you think the Sussex story deserves more than recycled headlines, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications and join the conversation. Because this chapter has only just begun.